we've been watching really history unfold. Federal officials from the Southern District of New York and the FBI, just with specificity, laid out serious charges against the current sitting mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. He is now charged with bribery, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, illegal campaign contributions from foreign nationals, and an additional count of wire fraud. And they specified that some of this has to do with flights, international flights totaling $100,000 that were undisclosed to the American people, and that they say were a method of these donors currying favor with a man who was trying to become mayor, became mayor, and then he continued to cover up that these campaign contributions had been illegally made.
This indictment stems back to 2014 when Eric Adams was the Brooklyn borough president. For his part, New York City Mayor Adams was speaking earlier. He said, "Everyone who knows me knows I follow campaign rules and I follow the law." He has denied the charges against him. We have team coverage, including CBS News legal contributor Caroline Polisi, CBS News senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety, Anna Schechter, who's here with us in the studio, as well as Joe Anuta. He's a reporter covering City Hall for Politico New York.
Anna, let's start with you. You've been here on set as this has all been really unfolding. We're all watching this happen. The mayor says he's innocent. He's never taken illegal campaign funds. And the thing about covering it up, he says, you know, that's not something that he's done either. But CBS News has been able to look at some of the evidence here. Why will it be challenging for him to prove that he didn't do any of these things?
Well, the level of detail in this indictment is staggering. You see it's this enormous stack of papers. And what prosecutors have done is listed out tens of thousands of dollars in flights. They have the receipts for those flights to Hungary, to France, to China, often to India, oftentimes flying through Istanbul, staying in a suite, a luxury suite in Istanbul, all of that. CBS News, our team, Emmett Lyons, has also looked through opensecrets.org. We see big $5,000 contribution chunks from Turkish citizens, and we're working to, match those details to what we see laid out in the indictment. But clearly, he worked for a period of time to build these relationships, and you see in text messages, excerpts of phone calls and emails, this relationship building where people close to Erdogan were working to curry favor with him, and he was essentially taking the bait and enjoying all of these perks, enjoying these business class tickets, enjoying the hotel suites. And they lay out, the prosecutors are laying out that he knew that they were trying to curry favor with him, and he did it anyway.
Caroline, I want to bring you into this conversation as well, given your role as a legal contributor. So it sounds like the Southern District has laid out two different, among all the charges, two different real issues, that there are these travel benefits that the mayor and then borough president had received that he didn't disclose, but that there were also these campaign contributions that he used these straw donors in order to receive matching contributions to which he wasn't entitled, totaling $10 million in public matching funds. Of those two allegations, what's the more serious allegations that he's facing now?
Well, they're all serious. I mean, this is a 57-page indictment with 5 counts. The bribery is probably the more serious. The campaign finance law violation is probably on the lesser side. But those straw donations, essentially, getting illegal funds from New Yorkers to the tune of $10 million is just staggering. And Damian Williams, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, clearly has this case very buttoned up. I mean, you saw that, he had this slide there to his side laying out all the benefits that Mayor Adams had received. And he outlined really an almost decades-long period in which Adams cultivated these relationships, got the benefits. And then, I would just note that the illegal campaign contributions, bribery notwithstanding, are in and of themselves crimes. And so you heard Mayor Adams there really sort of aggressively belligerent in his indignation with respect to these investigators seizing his phones 10 months ago, and then this morning seizing his phones. We heard a statement from his lawyer, Alex Spiro, who is a real bulldog, I will tell you. And, that's what happens in federal criminal investigations. This is not out of the ordinary in that, Adams was complaining he had heard nothing about, these charges prior. He was left in the dark. Well, that's what happens. Criminal defendants and targets of criminal investigations are left in the dark. He was complaining about, information being leaked. Now, unclear who or whether or not that can be tied back to the prosecutor's office, but these are typical things that happen. His lawyer said they stormed his, Gracie Mansion this morning to get his phones when they would have happily turned them over. Well, that's not really how it works. I mean, they have to use the element of surprise so that they can get every bit of information. So you have two sides here. I mean, Adams, he is entitled to due process. He is innocent until proven guilty, and he will have his day in court. But we'll just see how this plays out.
We're covering this breaking story of the sitting mayor being indicted by the federal government for bribery and other charges. The indictment unsealed a short time ago. It's about as heavy as a brick. Lana Zach is with me. We've got our panel of Anna Schechter. You just heard Caroline Polisi, and we have Joe Anuda with Politico as well. Joe, let me get a question to you. You cover City Hall for Politico. For about 10 months, my sources in City Hall have been texting me, expecting an indictment of the mayor. A long time ago, we've seen his inner circle being wrapped up in their own charges. How much has this impacted the business of the city, and where is the pressure for him to step down?
Well, I think to start, the business of the city has been greatly impacted, I would say. I mean, just over the last couple of weeks, we've seen major figures in the administration resign because of various federal investigations. Separate from what seems to, the focus of today's indictment, the school's chancellor resigned. The New York City Police Commissioner resigned. The mayor's chief lawyer resigned sort of late on a Saturday night. Those all have to do with separate probes into potential wrongdoing at City Hall. And I think having chaos at the top of these agencies, it's very hard to get things done for really all the public servants who are just trying to do the business of the city on any given day. So I think the impact is great, and we're going to be seeing sort of the fallout of that as the days go on. And so, sorry, what was the other question you asked?
Well, that's exactly it, the business of the city. So considering everything you've just laid out, where is the pressure for him to step down? He says he's completely innocent, and there's no need to.
Well, I think the press conference we saw is actually very interesting. The pressure to step down, and really largely the criticism to date has come from a lot of the mayor's typical political foes. It comes from more of the left wing of the Democratic Party here. You saw AOC calling the mayor to resign yesterday, and really a lot of the sort of prominent figures in the city's left. And so I think the mayor, when he put his press conference together today, has his own show of support. And I think it's very telling about who's calling on him to resign and who isn't yet. I don't think we've seen these calls reach his political base as of yet, which I think is important for him. And I think as long as he has the support of that base, he will not resign. It's not really his style as someone who's covered him for a couple of years. And I think to some extent, when you have people who he considers his political enemies calling on him to resign, I think that can play into his messaging to his base to say, look, these folks who already don't like me, now they're using allegations that haven't even been proven in court to try and get me out of office.
And that's an important point, that our legal system professes a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Joe, do talk to us, though, about the role that the governor, Kathy Hochul, could potentially play in deciding whether or not the New York City's mayor does, in fact, remain in office.
So The governor has the power to remove the mayor, right? That's something that legally she could do. I don't think it's ever been done. And I think if you take a step back and look at the relationship between the two, the governor and the mayor have been very close allies. So there have been a lot of fights going on in Albany for sort of, this is outside the city's legislative process, but something the mayor is very interested in. He and the governor have been very strong allies, pushing back against the legislature on a number of issues, on housing, on criminal justice reforms. I think the governor has found in her own runs for office, she has kind of a weakness in New York in certain neighborhoods, and in fact, the very same neighborhoods that support the mayor. So there has been a very strong political alliance here. You really never hear the mayor say a bad word about the governor and vice versa. So I think the calculations in the governor's office right now are very interesting. I think it will take a lot for her to come out after the mayor, even publicly. And I think trying to extrapolate that out to whether she would actually remove him from office, I think it would take a lot just based on their past relationship. They're very close, at least sort of publicly.
All right, Joe Anuta, thank you.
Hofstra University law professor James Sample, thank you very much for talking with us.
James, good to have you with us again. Most shocking to you about these allegations against Mayor Adams?
It's good to be with both of you. The thing that is most shocking to me is actually the matching funds and the abuse of New York City's campaign finance matching program, which is intended to elevate the voice, elevate the political voices of average New Yorkers, small donor matching contributions. You give $250, the public taxpayers match that up to an 8-to-1 match, so you get $2,000. And if you read this indictment, one of the most profound statements is the description of the straw donor dynamic. And we often hear that phrase. What is a straw donor? It essentially means that the true contributors of the actual money involved are contributing their resources through nominal donors, essentially shell people. Those shell people, if you will, are falsely certifying that they're contributing their own money. And the result of those false certifications is that taxpayer dollars get spent on the campaign. What does that mean in plain, simple English? It means cheating in an election campaign, and it means defrauding the people of New York. And the sentence on page 2 of the indictment is just staggering. As a result of those false certifications, Adams' 2021 mayoral campaign received more than $10 million in public funds. That is staggering. And if you're the Southern District of New York, if you're Damian Williams, just think about the recent period. Sam Bankman-Fried, Senator Menendez, and now Mayor Eric Adams. When it comes to rooting out financial misdeeds, Damian Williams doesn't play.
Can you break down the legal ramifications that Adams is facing, particularly when it comes to campaign finance laws?
Well, there's multiple different versions of this. It appears that particularly because, and this is a point that you and Chris have mentioned already multiple times today during your coverage, but particularly because the money here is coming in many instances from foreign nationals and foreign governments, and that there does seem to be an express quid pro quo. There's sort of levels of corruption, if you will, and levels of scrutiny in our campaign finance system. Domestic corruption is a huge problem, but foreign corruption is even more of a problem. It's especially a problem. And so we have heightened standards, greater levels of scrutiny. And when you're talking about taking money from foreign nationals and foreign governments, I'm looking here at page 19 of the indictment. It says Adams continued to conceal benefits from the foreign nationals seeking to gain influence over them. And an Adams staffer texts Adams to be on the safe side, please delete all messages you send me. Adams, end quote. Adams responded, quote, always do, end quote. That speaks to a mens rea. It speaks to a mental state of understanding the culpability of what's involved. And what is the Turkish government getting in exchange if you take these allegations at face value? Well, there's one story in which it says that Adams had been consorting with an anti-government Turkish movement, or a center that was associated with that movement. The Turkish official told Adams to stop associating with the center, or he would no longer receive Turkish support. Quote, in the indictment, Adams acquiesced. That's foreign influence in the affairs of New York City.
You know, it kind of goes back to the Menendez trial. It's like when you bring in foreign governments and you hear about a U.S. senator acting as a foreign agent for another country, Egypt in that case, it kind of brings it into new light. And then, as you mentioned here, you know, with Turkey playing such an influential role in this indictment, it just makes it even more disturbing. Let me ask you how he can effectively execute his job as mayor of this city. We know the court of public opinion obviously has tremendous influence before these cases are even tried. How does this, even at Gracie Mansion, when he came down for that preemptive press conference, there was active people there yelling, and there were protests, and there was a bit of a ruckus. I mean, this is what he's going to now deal with. How is that going to affect how he can execute his job?
Yeah, Chris, that is so true. And that press conference in front of Gracie Mansion was wild. I think I don't know if that's a term of art, but that's essentially what it was. And it speaks to a combative, pugnacious approach. And you think about this, and we talked about this morning, you don't think Donald Trump and Eric Adams have a whole lot in common. But in a sense, Eric Adams is pulling plays right out of the Donald Trump playbook. Oh, this is, in one instance, we hear it called a witch hunt. And then Eric Adams today says, I've had a target on my back. We've had mayors in New York City. We've had 110 mayors in the history of this city. We've never had one indicted. All of this talk about, is the Justice Department being weaponized? Is this DOJ or SDNY going after parties for political reasons? Eric Adams is a Democrat. Donald Trump in the January 6 cases or the classified documents cases, he's obviously the leading figure in the Republican Party. To do the job of mayor of New York City while having to deal with all of this, and you've already seen it when you talk about 2 deputy mayors have stepped down. His chief counsel, one of his closest advisors has stepped down. The scope of the chaos that is engulfing this administration is staggering, but he obviously is taking an approach that says we're going to fight. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yes, we will. We were talking with Marsha Kramer about this at the desk here all morning. We're going to see what some of the other influential New York politicians have to say about this as to how far he tends to fight this. James, thank you once again. Always great to talk with you.
Likewise.
Okay.
And we were listening to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District Court outline the federal charges against the mayor. Here's what Damian Williams said at that press conference right around noon.
The conduct alleged in the indictment, the foreign money, the corporate money, the bribery, the years of concealment, is a grave breach of the public's trust. Public office is a privilege. We allege that Mayor Adams abused that privilege and broke the law. Laws that are designed to ensure that officials like him serve the people, not the highest bidder, not a foreign bidder, and certainly not a foreign power.